And we're live here on Facebook, like the one who's listening in podcast land. And also like to welcome my buddy Rich. Rich, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mike. It's been a kind of a cold week down here in the Quad Cities, but it's supposed to start warming up next week. Is it's going to be in the mid 30s, at
Yeah,
least above freezing.
yeah,
But
our weather here is pretty similar to that. That's pretty exciting. And we're gonna be above freezing tomorrow for the first time in like a month.
wow,
Yeah.
so it hasn't been that bad. It's just been a really cold, maybe a week. Yeah, a week where it's been kind of cold, but no snow. So I still think that's so I'm kind of grateful for that. I've only had the shovel maybe twice this entire winter, so I'm hoping that continues, but it probably won't.
Yeah, come up here. You are coming up here next week.
I
By
am
the
next
way,
week.
we're gonna be together in studio up here in the north, and Amy will get to stand next to a snow pile that's taller than her.
Wow, 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 wow.
I mean, that doesn't take much when you consider how much snow we've gotten this year. But our snow is above our mailbox, so that's
I
a
don't think
thing.
it's ever gotten that high. Living where I'm at in the Quad Cities.
Yeah, it's bad, but it's fine. I mean, you clear off the roads, and then you just have you're driving in canyons is what it really feels like, basically. So, real feel right now is -16.
Hmm.
I don't know what real feel for you is, but as I look at the 10-day forecast, oh, what?
It's looking good as long as we don't. And with as cold as it's been, like the snow is frozen to the ground. So I don't think we'll have any issues with blowing snow across the farmlands as we're driving on the interstate to come up to you guys start driving up to you guys on Friday. So there's that. So that should be good. I don't think there'll be any weather issues that would cause us to have to call it off at the last minute. But Mike, that's next week.
Yep.
Kind of a light show. Kind of a light show. We'll just be talking about the conference championship games. Did officiating influence the outcome of? Did the officials play a bigger part in those outcomes than we would have liked?
Yeah.
As
That's a
well
good
as
point.
talking about the two newest head coaching hires and who many people call the GOAT retiring. What
Yeah.
else are we going to be talking about, Mike?
Well, we have our first real NASCAR corner of 2023. We'll also be talking about retirement of a great. Maybe not a great. A good. A good.
Okay.
Do you not have it even on here?
I don't.
We-
Who else retired, Mike?
Baseball.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. All right.
Okay,
All that and more, Mike. Well, what do we got to do first?
we got to roll that intro. Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa. This is Balls and Sticks, the podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Rich. And we're back. Okay, before we get into our sports topics of the week, we are going to talk about our poll questions and the next 5 weeks. Rich, this week's poll question was Final Countdown versus Lose Yourself.
Yes, it was, Mike. I believe I went with Final Countdown. I think I really don't have a solid reason on why this week. Usually I do.
Okay. I went with Lose Yourself because, I'm a poor ghetto boy.
Hmm.
And I
Okay.
don't and I don't like 80s music. I don't. But it was a 7-2 win for Final Countdown. The 7 are my wife, Adam Heath, your father, you, my sister Barbara, Ashley, and Brian Wyrich.
Brian Wyrich, yeah, a guy that I deployed with, went overseas with. So thank you, everyone, for voting. Who joined you in voting for Lose Yourself?
My wife's coworker, Doug Vanderwalt.
All right. So, Mike, I know last week I talked about, this will be the final first-round matchup. In theory, it is, but when I totaled up how many songs that we've gone through and have won, I only came up with 11. And it's kind of hard, and I didn't necessarily want to do any polls that would put 3 songs on some weeks and 2 songs on another week. So what Mike and I decided to do was a play-in tournament of sorts. If the NBA can have a play-in tournament, so can we. So we each chose 5 songs, and those 5 songs will make up the remaining field to go on to when we kind of resume a winner-take-all type of approach in this poll system and go to a Sweet 16. So, Mike, what was your first non-winning song that you're going to put forward as a play-in?
Well, Rich, I'm going to put in Enter Sandman by Metallica.
All right. And I'm going to go with Cotton Eye Joe.
We'll let it loose. I mean, we'll
let it see. We'll let it see.
Yep.
We'll see how it goes. I'll probably put the poll going live next week. And then over the next 5 weeks, over the next 4 weeks, on the next 4 shows, you'll find out what those other 4 songs are that we selected to move on in our play-in, what we're calling a play-in tournament.
Yeah.
So, Mike, speaking of tournaments, we had conference championships for the NFL. Mike, why don't you tell us how the NFC championship game went?
Not at all how any of us expected it. The 49ers lost to the Eagles 31-7. Man, do those Eagles look good. Fly, Eagles, fly, if you will. In that, however, starting third-string quarterback Brock Purdy injured himself. And
I don't know if he was injured himself. He got injured playing.
Right. And he may end up having to have Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, they're saying he had a UCL or UHL, one of those elbow injuries. I think they're saying that he could be out 6 to 9 months. Might have to have Tommy John surgery. Might be doing rehab, but he's not going to be able to do football activities for at least the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And then also in that game, the 4th-string quarterback, the guy that was elevated to number 2, gets a concussion.
They were getting ready to put in their emergency quarterback, a.k.a. Christian McCaffrey.
Or Kyle Juszczyk. I think they were talking about how Kyle Juszczyk could also function as an emergency quarterback. So by all means, the Eagles won that game. But a lot of it you could point out to, that's what can happen when the opposing team doesn't technically have a quarterback, because they put Brock Purdy back in the game after they had to pull Josh Johnson, but you knew those passes, it was going to be jet sweeps, handoffs, or really short passes since Purdy couldn't throw.
Yeah. You never had to cheat to the deep ball. Yeah, it was not a great look. And
so one meme thing that I saw on the Facebook this week was like an Eagles fan saying Eagles fan, yeah, we're going back to the Super Bowl. Nobody respects us. Screw you. We're going back to the Super Bowl. And then somebody else responding, yeah, but you beat Daniel Jones and a team that had no quarterback through 3 quarters of the game.
Yep. Yeah.
But they were still a great team
Oh yeah.
overall. So,
Their defense played well. They
Mhm.
You can't take anything away from them. They did
No,
great.
no.
So
You really can't. You really can't. So I mean, I will get to who we think who our Super Bowl picks are next week. So we'll try not to hint or allude to how we feel about the big game until next week's show. Over on the AFC side, Mike, that was a close game, much like we both expected it to
Yep.
be, as the Chiefs won 23-20 over the Cincinnati Bengals.
yeah, turnovers. You can't have turnovers in the playoffs.
No,
And that's
both teams had turnovers.
yeah,
Both teams had turnovers late in the games.
and it cost the Bengals the game.
And an untimely penalty cost
Yeah.
them the game.
Man,
Which I'm
Okay.
watching that, and I'm seeing how he gets called for roughing the passer or a late hit. But when you're going full speed to make a stop, how can you stop yourself and not? Because if he doesn't touch Patrick Mahomes falls down on his own. There's no penalty, and that's what, a 53 or a 52-yard game-winning field goal as opposed to a 45-yard field goal.
Yep.
But because Patrick Mahomes got touched, and it looked like, I've heard some people say, man, that was a great flop job by him to even more sell that as a late hit. But that's the way you play the game sometimes.
Yeah, it really is, and you got to take. I mean, by technicality, man, I hate calling stuff like this. We try not to do it, but man, you brought it up earlier. The officiating in both of these games were hot garbage.
Yeah, I didn't watch as much of the Eagles-49ers game, but I did watch all of the Chiefs-Bengals games. So what questionable calls where you think were there in the Eagles-Niners game?
I think it wasn't. There were plenty of non-holding calls by the Eagle that the Eagles didn't get called on them. And not just there's holding on every play, but like blatant holding calls. They also had issues with catches that weren't catches. It was terribly called game. It looked like they had blindfolds on for the Eagles, but as soon as the 49ers and legitimately a lot of the calls that went against the 49ers were definitely penalties. They deserve to be called. But with that game, what I had an issue with was the lack of calls on the Eagles. And not because the Eagles weren't performing penalties, they just weren't getting the call. The 49ers were not getting the calls. That's my problem with that game.
Gotcha. So before we move on to talking about the Chiefs-Bengals game, one thing that got kind of thrown about this week was that should the NFL have a similar rule or allowance like the NHL does for an emergency quarterback, similar to what hockey has for an emergency goalie. So a team like the 49ers isn't put into a position to where in the odd event that the starting quarterback and the backup quarterback both get injured, could you call on that technically a person that's not actively on your active roster?
It's not unusual for them
to
to have
go
three
in there and
quarterbacks.
have a third quarterback.
It is not unusual for a team to have three quarterbacks that are on the roster, on the active roster on game days. That's not unusual. What's unusual is your third string quarterback is your starting quarterback, and your emergency quarterback is your backup, and try to find a guy this time of year who you can trust to come in. I don't know that this would, like, even having a quote-unquote emergency quarterback. Like,
So I mean,
how far down do
somebody
you
that was on their practice squad?
how far down do you let it go, though, Rich?
Not all the practice squad players travel with the team.
You have 53 men. Week 6, how many quarterbacks? Let's go back even further. Week 4, how many quarterbacks did they have on their active roster for the game?
They were dressing 2 a game.
I think they were dressing 3. Some teams dress 3, and sometimes your third quarterback is your holder and your does multiple duty. You might put him out there on the kickoff squad because you don't want to put somebody out there that could get hurt. But it's not unusual for you to have a third quarterback that does duties like holding and stuff like that, stuff that you wouldn't have a Jimmy G do on a regular basis.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I had heard before. It was a requirement that each team had to dress have 3 quarterbacks on the active roster, and then after a while it got relaxed to where the last man on the roster could be anybody that you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's probably no different than if you had what happens if your kicker gets injured for somehow. Then you're not kicking field goals, or you got to put your punter out there or put a player out there that might want to give it a try.
I think it happened. I mean, let's look at LA. Look at how many offensive linemen, how many people they had injured at any given moment. At some point, you just can't add more guys. Like, yeah, you can put them on injured reserve, but if you think they're coming back within 4 weeks, you can't do that. So then you have to have them on the active roster. And then
it was just it was.
No, I get the point. I understand your question, but the hard part for me is we're in the playoffs. You get to choose who's on your active roster. Now, yes, you can only choose from your practice squad guys. You're allowed to sign. I think you're allowed to sign a guy if you have to in a emergency. But at some point, how far down do you go? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, even if there was the practice squad player that would only get to put on the jersey and be added to the emergency roster, in this case, once it was determined that Josh Johnson, the third string guy?
Yeah, fourth string guy.
Fourth string, but in that game he was the backup, went out with a concussion. If it was ruled that, nope, he's got a concussion, we're not putting him back in under no circumstances, and that's when you could dress the, in theory, emergency quarterback.
But what happens
but I don't think that guy's probably not going to be somebody that's going to maybe give your guys enough of a difference to win the game. But at least in theory, you could have still had that element, even if you're operating on a scaled down playbook. That at least there would have been that element that, hey, they could push the ball down the field through the air. But that was, by the end of it, was really tough to watch the 49ers. Because you knew it was going to happen every single time. They were going to run the ball in some way, in some fashion.
Rich, I'm going to go back to, I think, and again, you're going to have to forgive me, but I think it was the first season of All or Nothing. I think it was.
I've never watched any of the All or Nothing, so you're on your own on this one, but go ahead.
Okay. I thought you watched those. Those are the ones on Amazon Prime. You didn't watch any of those?
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to come up on Wednesday, and I'll take the whole rest of the week off, and we'll just binge watch All or Nothing. I think you'd like it. Okay. And I think it was the first season, but they had a wide receiver. The quarterbacks were having this competition who could throw the football into the garbage can 50 yards downfield.
Okay, yeah, I think I do remember this. It was like the competition between. Was that with the Cardinals? So you had like Carson Palmer at the time.
Yeah.
Carson Palmer and like his backups, but other people somehow chime in, or the coaching staff, like the quarterback coach would get in on it.
Well, they had a their running back. Their running back joined in. And if you didn't win, you had to dress in stupid, ridiculous ways and blah, blah, blah. And that's just how it was. But they had their quarterback, or their running back, hitting 50-yard bombs, landing them in a garbage can. Half the guys on the squad, whether it's a running back, a wide receiver, tight end, most of those guys might not be able to get it into a bucket at 50 yards. But at 10 yards, at 15 yards, most of those guys are going to be able to know how to play the game well enough that they could jump in and be a quarterback if needed. Christian McCaffrey, I think, would have done a fine job if he would have been the quarterback.
Or at least a better job than putting Brock Purdy back there.
Yeah.
Knowing that, this ball's not getting thrown. It's just how it's going to get handed off.
Right.
Would have been a better offensive plan.
And you could have brought in...
Would have been a better offensive plan than doing with McCaffrey being under center and taking snaps.
Yep.
As a wildcat, would have been a better plan than putting Brock Purdy out there and risking further injury.
And that was my next comment. You play these wildcats and you have these wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, all getting direct snaps and all having throwing the ball, or at least once in a while throw the ball. We see it regularly. Why is that any less of an option just because you're in the playoffs? If they're good enough to do it, just use that the rest of the game. Change it up. You can bring up... By the way, if you have Christian McCaffrey dressed or playing quarterback, if he's quote-unquote the quarterback for that, you know what you can also do? You can bring a fullback in as a running back, and you can have an extra blocker that can give him time, a little bit more time. You can bring big guys in to play roles to protect him a little bit longer so he has the time to be able to try to throw those balls. There are plenty of other options, and so I don't think that you absolutely need to have this third string quarterback dress or even an emergency quarterback.
Now, it's just something I thought I'd get your opinion on.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, no, I like it.
I like it.
It's good discussion. So on the Chiefs game, I gave my opinion on the Eagles-Niners game. Let's hear what you think of the officiating in general of that game.
Well, the one kind of head-scratcher for me in Chiefs-Bengals was the phantom third down that the Chiefs got driving down the field. And luckily, on that set of downs, that third down, they still didn't convert into a first down.
No, they did convert that. They didn't, but there was a penalty, so they got a first down, and then they went 3 and out after that second first down, or after that first down. They didn't convert it, but they had a penalty, and that penalty was a 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down.
So, I mean, you saw Zach Taylor on the sideline just livid. It's like, what do you mean? The play continued as if there was no stoppage of play. But yep. I mean, once
here's a question:
did slow it down and see? Oh, yep, there was an official coming out of nowhere, waving his hands, calling it off, and the other refs didn't see him.
Here's a bigger question. If there would have been a defensive offsides, does that get taken back? If there would have been a defensive holding, does that play still not count? I would say if there's anything other than what would be a unsportsmanlike conduct, by the way, wouldn't that entire play, any hit that a defensive player gave an offensive player, be an unsportsmanlike conduct because the play was whistled dead?
That's true. They could have called it if the play was whistled dead and there was a hit. Technically, they could have hit him with unnecessary roughness or late hit, or a late hit penalty after that if they had wanted to. That would have probably even caused a bigger controversy than the 2 third downs, 2 third down calls that happened.
Either way, I don't like that. I think that's a good call. How about the missing pass or the roughing the passers that Joe Cool ended up not getting, multiple times being thrown to the ground, and yet no calls are made after the ball's out of his hands.
Yep.
I don't, and this is the hard part. This is the thing that's hard to me. Most of the time, I am not the guy that thinks that the refs cause problems regularly. I really am not. But what I am is I'm the guy that says, why, when we have games like this, are we seeing such bad officiating? Why on a regular basis? And why is it that the NFL allows the fire to be stoked so much to say, see, the refs are in on it and have a particular person they need to win?
Yeah, I mean, after all, the NFL is not classified as a sport. They are classified as entertainment.
That's news to me. When did that happen?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's what I've seen, is that they are classified as a sport. They're classified as an entertainment business, not necessarily a sport. So could these officiatings be influencing the outcomes of games so the NFL gets the matchups that they want in the prime games?
Yeah.
You never know, but what we had in both of these games kind of made you wonder, is that what happened?
Yeah.
Is that what happened in this situation? Because, as much as I wanted to see a storyline of Mr. Irrelevant versus a Bills team that had Damar Hamlin coming back from having his life saved on the field and watching his team go all the way to the Super Bowl. In a sense, This matchup does have good storylines. You have the Kelsey brothers becoming the first set of brothers to get playing against each other in a Super Bowl.
Yep.
And it's the first time that in history where you've had 2 African-American quarterbacks facing off as the starting quarterbacks against each other.
And it's the Andy Reid Bowl.
And Andy Reid. It's not the first time that a former coach has come back to coach against his team. But that is a third storyline of Andy Reid going up against his former team.
Yeah. So you brought up the point, and I think this is the ultimate proof that the NFL is not a rigged organization. But if the NFL really wanted to get ratings and really wanted to do all of those things, do you think they would have let the Bills lose? Like, the story behind those Bills right now, before the Damar Hamlin thing happened, the Bills were already coming out after the America's team moniker. They were already trying to vie for that. That was before Damar Hamlin. Then the Damar Hamlin thing happened, and all of a sudden, they no longer were fighting for it. They owned that moniker. Everybody cared about it. Everybody was sharing, praying for Damar, blah, whatever. Thoughts and prayers. Everybody was doing it.
Every NFL team having something with number 3 on it pregame.
Right.
Pregame or anything.
The world was centered around Damar Hamlin and his recovery. If the NFL was rigged, they would have guaranteed that he was there for the flipping of the coin, and he was the honorary captain for that team. That is why I say they are. You can't tell me that they're rigged.
No, I don't think they're rigged either.
So
it makes for good discussions, though, and that's what the NFL is all about. They want to stay in the news cycle, and you got to have something to talk about in the off week in between the Super Bowl, in between your championship week.
Well, let's
and
speak
the Super
about.
Bowl.
Well, talking about that, the Texans have hired a head coach.
They have. They hired their former inside linebacker for the Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco previously cut his teeth in coaching in the San Francisco organization, going from quality control to a linebackers coach to a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good move. I question, the one thing I do question, you are going from a defensive-minded head coach to another defensive-minded head coach.
Yeah.
That's to me that's kind of a rough spot to be in.
But it's better than hiring a wide receiver coach who had never even been a coordinator, let alone a head coach, though. Which is what happened when David Culley got hired.
Yeah. I'm not denying it, but I'm just saying that there are better I think there were better options out there, and I think there still are better options out there and people to go after.
Yeah, for me, I think that the Texans were almost in a no-win situation.
Yeah,
they either needed to hire a coach that, hire a coach that they could fully commit to and were willing to commit to. Because I think if they had hired a non-minority candidate, and they had the previous results as Lovie Smith and David Culley, and yet they got year 2, there would have been a media uproar about why didn't Lovie or David Culley get this chance? What did they do wrong?
I think it depends on how the outcome of this year goes. But even beyond that, even more than that, way more than that, I think they get a little bit of credit because of the last 2 head coaches that they've hired. Their teams have been garbage. Honestly, David Culley didn't deserve to be where he was. The problem there was that he was saddled with a quarterback who was raping people.
Well, and you knew getting into that job that you didn't know what the Watson punishment was going to be, if it was going to be issued that season.
Yeah.
And you also knew going into the job that Watson didn't want to be with the Texans anymore.
Yeah,
because the rape allegations came out after they had hired Culley.
Yep.
And that's when Watson had demanded the trade away from the Texans because he felt that his opinion wasn't being heard on who should have been hired to be the next head coach after Bill O'Brien was let go.
Yeah, and I agree with that. But the biggest problem there is that David Culley didn't get the opportunities he deserved. He was set up for failure. Lovie Smith came in, still did better than I think he did. Like, he did better than he was supposed to, at least, which is why he lost the job. But he also wasn't
set up in a good situation either.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that it's a kind of a screwed up situation no matter what you do. And hopefully, I think, didn't DeMarco demand a 6-year contract?
I don't know about demand a 6-year contract, but he did get a 6-year agreement.
Pretty sure he went in and said, if you're hiring me, it's a commitment. I need a 6-year contract. And it's basically, if they fire him before year 4, I think it is, that it's heavily penalized. Like, I don't know that it's guaranteed money, but I think it's...
Yeah, the story I post on here from Pro Football Rumors does not outline what the contract is, but I did hear that it was a 6-year deal. And I think that the history that he has with the organization does help out, that he was a former player, and he's got that willingness that he wanted to be come back to Houston.
Yeah.
Kind of helps it along. So the other person that got a head coaching job is one that's coming back into being the head coach. Sean Payton is going to be the head man out in Denver.
Yeah, and was this set up?
What do you mean by a setup?
Well, our next story is about a guy who's getting ready to go to Fox. Fox just has too many people on their payroll, needs to figure out what to do. Sean Payton goes to the Broncos. That's going to help.
Well, because if I remember correctly, Sean Payton got hired and he went to the studio.
Yeah, he did.
He took Jimmy Johnson's seat when Jimmy Johnson wasn't in studio with the guys, and he was an extra guy on the broadcast on the studio show when Jimmy Johnson was working that week.
Yep.
But I believe their plan when they signed Brady was that he was going to be on the lead broadcasting team with Kevin Burkhardt.
Yeah.
But now what I'm seeing is Greg Olson calling great games, and now Fox doesn't quite know. All right, are we going to demote Greg Olson after he's improved as a broadcaster and people are liking him, just to bring in Tom Brady? So maybe you're right. Maybe Tom Brady does get put to the studio, starts off in the studio instead of going straight to the booth.
Yep. So we still have 2 hirings left to happen. The Cardinals and the Colts still have job openings. I really think that the Colts are going to end up hiring Jeff Saturday.
I do. That's what it's seemingly looking like. Because, I mean, I guess Kellen Moore got some interviews, but he went out to the Chargers to be their offensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn chose to stay in Dallas instead of going to Denver or Arizona. So I really don't know who's going to get these 2 jobs, to be honest with you. And
yep.
Really, the good candidates are gone. So they could be. I wouldn't surprise me if both these jobs end up being 1-year hires. Because the talent just isn't there.
I mean, could you be trying to poach somebody from Andy Reid's coaching staff?
Yeah, or even the Colts. I've heard the Shane Sarchichin, I think that's his name, Shezrin, the offensive coordinator for the Eagles.
Yep.
Is a good candidate to get one of the jobs. But Arizona seems to be a situation that just could be set up to fail.
Yeah, Arizona's
you're not going to have Kyler Murray for a year.
Yeah, Arizona's going to be bad. I don't know. We're gonna have to see. I think Arizona ends up being like a, hey, here's a job. You're just a placeholder.
We'll hire somebody in that. I don't know. Do you promote? Do you keep an interim tag on somebody and have them be the interim head coach for a year?
Are you allowed to do an interim for a year?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
We should look into that. But that's an interesting concept. A 1-year interim, like a full year interim head coach. But
a full year.
Okay.
I don't know.
And finally, one of the greatest of all times, Tom Brady, has retired.
Again.
Yeah, this one I think sticks. Like, last one, somebody in his camp shared the news that he was retiring. Not him. And he kind of went along with it for about 3 to 6 weeks. And they said, nope, I'm coming back. Completely different situation. This time he sat on a beach and got emotional and said, I'm retiring. No more fanfare. This one I think sticks.
Yeah. So was this season worth losing his wife over? With the way the season ended, because there's been, I think I've seen some stories about these are Giselle spots on the newest announcement. I never clicked on the stories to really read them because it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
that much.
I don't know. I think if a marriage comes before a career, if Danielle said that she needed to leave this area because she just couldn't do it anymore. By the way, there's nothing in our lives says that at all. God has us here for a reason. We're trying to figure it out. We're trying to work it out, and we're both happy here. So this is just a purely hypothetical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if she said we have to move, I'd say, God, is it all right? And if he said it's okay, we're moving. Even if I'm at a spot where my career could go exponentially better, is it worth my marriage in any way, shape, or form? If it's going to cost me my marriage, I say I don't know that there's much worth that. I have to answer to God first, and then after that, I have to answer to my wife, and that's it.
Yep. So I mean, I totally have to agree with it. You got to agree with it, and but I guess Tom felt otherwise, that his career and wanting to prove that he can still do it, or maybe it was a thing of he needed to prove to himself that it was over. I mean, there was no title of, you know what, sometimes the game, we never know. I think the quote, from Moneyball, like, we play a children apart, not going to get it all right, but the gist of it was that we all get told at one point that we're no longer good enough to play the game. Some get told in elementary school or high school, others get told 20 years after playing in pro ball, but we all get told at one time it's time to stop playing the game. So was this season Tom Brady's it's time to stop playing the game because of how difficult it was to get his team into the playoffs in a weak division, no less.
I don't know. I don't know what spawned this. Unless his marriage can be reconciled, I don't see a reason for him not to go back. Unless he knows something about his health that nobody else does, and he's realizing his body just physically can't do it anymore, which it totally could be.
Yeah,
he
totally.
Looked for much of the season not like the Tom Brady of yesteryear, but he still looked good enough that he could have a starting role next year if he wanted it. He still did. Does that mean, but does he know something about his body that we don't know? Or, I pray, did Giselle say, okay, I'm sorry, I do truly love you, I really want to try to make this work, but you can't go back to football anymore. Move in with me and the kids down here in Miami. I don't know. But,
I don't know either.
But
I'm sure if that's the case, that'll get that.
Oh, we're gonna find out.
You'll find out about it.
Yeah.
You'll find out. But there's still part of me that until I see him calling games on Fox on preseason and pro game on week 1, that's when I'll know for sure that he's retired and done. Because there's going to be the rumors of a team that might not get, if a team's starting quarterback gets knocked out in the preseason, especially in a marquee team that could afford him, that he'd want to play for. There's always going to be that maybe those rumors that are saying, could they pursue Tom Brady? Would Tom Brady come out of retirement to play for that team? If San Francisco's quarterback situation, if Purdy isn't ready to go by week 1, if Trey Lance still hasn't recovered and is fully ready for week 1, could San Francisco be a place that calls him up and says, hey, what would it take to get you out to come out of retirement one more time?
Vegas. Yeah, there are plenty of places that could use him. But again, you got to go back to you let your yes be your yes and your no be your no. And when you retire, be retired. You're 40. You're 45, 46. Enjoy it.
But if anything, right now there is closure on it because I think on his own podcast, like I think it was he does it with I heard it was like Jim Gray asking. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room with you. Or do you plan to play next season? And he shot him down with I don't effing know. Yeah. If I knew, I would say something. Right now, I'm still trying to figure that out. I don't know. Yeah. To giving that type of answer, being frustrated or mad that question got addressed on his own podcast, to coming out just on a Twitter and saying, you know what, it's time to go.
Yeah.
This is all I'm going to say about it.
By the way, I like the way he did it.
I got my emotional goodbye last year. You only get one of those.
I love the way he did it. I think that was, I think more guys should go that route. But, okay. Rich, do you see what's coming up next?
I do, Mike. It's a left turn.
And then after that?
It's going to be another left turn.
Yep.
But before we make those left turns, we also got to make a couple right turns because we got to talk about the Rolex 24 on this first official edition of the NASCAR Corner. Mike, who's it presented by?
It's presented, as always, by Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated, Moline, Illinois. Check them out on 5th Avenue for all your sports memorabilia needs, or on their eBay store. Once again, that is Triple I Sports Cards Incorporated. So, last week at the Rolex 24, Rich, you picked the 60 car because you knew Elio Castroneves and Simon Paganda?
Simon Pindergaard.
Oh, Pindergaard.
And it was also an Acura, which is just an overpriced Honda.
Yep. And you picked the correct driver, which means you get to pick first this week for the Clash, and then I picked the number 7 car. They finished in 7th. They actually, I did you watch any of the race, Rich?
No, I did not.
I watched about 3 total hours.
Nice.
The end of the race was during our church. Our church had our annual business meeting that I have to present stuff for, so I was there and had to deal with that, and it went well, but it meant I missed the end of the race. But your guys won, so yeah, that was fun. This week's race, we are talking actual NASCAR drivers on a track, kind of, as we talk about the Clash at the Coliseum. In LA, they are taking over the LA Coliseum. They've paved it again. They put down temporary asphalt on top of more temporary asphalt in order to make a track that they can race on. And Rich, you have the first pick. Who are you picking?
Yeah, well, Mike, I'm going to go with my wife's favorite driver because I know we're going to be watching the races and hopefully some of the heats, but at least the main event race.
Yeah.
So I want to root along with her, so I'm going to go with Ross Chastain.
I like that pick. You want to watch him smash and eat a watermelon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I am going to pick Chase Elliott. Chase knows how to get around short tracks quite well. So, Rich, next week, what are we talking about, and what are you looking forward to?
Well, Mike, we got to talk about some rule modifications for NASCAR that they put out, which kind of one of those rules does deal directly with something that Ross Chastain did last year.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that next week.
Yep.
And we're also going to be looking at driver lineup changes, where some new faces in new rides.
Yep.
So kind of previewing drivers that have new rides and
hopefully we will also preview the fantasy NASCAR, but who knows when NASCAR is going to open it up. Normally it's not till the week of the Daytona 500. So
we'll need something to talk about with no football games to talk about. So we'll at least tell you how to play the game, how you can easily sign up, and then once we know for sure that the Fantasy Live is open back up to start making picks for the Daytona 500. We'll try and put that out on the Facebook and maybe even do one of those YouTube shorts to see if we can get these people to join us.
Yeah.
On those.
Rich, one more thing. I know you said because we won't have a football game next week. There is a football game this week. We forgot to talk about the Pro Bowl and the skills thing. Did you watch any of it?
I didn't watch any of the Pro Bowl. My boss was talking about it a little bit this morning. but I didn't watch any of it.
I
I was at our church's food pantry.
So we ended up talking to somebody. I think it was my in laws last night. Um, and while we were talking with the in laws, we I just put on the long drive competition, watched that. I think they did a pretty terrible job in covering it, but I like the concept of seeing these guys in other doing other things, and I don't have a problem with it. But and
Yeah,
honestly, this is probably a better use of the Pro Bowl than actually having a game anymore. A game that never meant anything. Really, it's hard to kind of count that as something for the like as a reason to do anything. Um, you're talking $10,000 for the loser, $15,000 for the winner, plus whatever bonus you get for being a Pro Bowler. That's it. That's all you get. And I know that like for you and I, a $10,000 check would be great. A $15,000, an extra 15, 20, 10 to $15,000 would be awesome. I'd love to do that. But in all honesty, for these guys, it to go out and risk themselves, that's dumb. But to do something like play a dodgeball game or do a long drive competition, or I don't remember what the other skills were that they did. Yeah, sure, I'm okay with that. And then they're gonna play the
a flag football game.
flag football game on Sunday. I won't watch it. I will watch the clash. I will not watch the flag football game. So, okay.
Yeah.
Um,
About the only thing that I remember hearing about the Pro Bowl was my boss was saying that Saquon Barkley could not throw a ball to save his life, and he even openly admitted it in the dodgeball game. I can't throw.
okay.
I can't throw. I'm a running back for a reason.
Yep.
I mean, it was, but and
So you don't have to worry about him playing in as your wildcat.
yeah, and then also Derek Carr in the skills competition portion wearing a hat that just has the NFL shield on it instead of wearing a Raiders cap. And talking about how, man, you got that a long way. It's like, yep, I hope to be throwing for a long way for another team next year.
Wow.
Looking forward to playing for another team next year because the Raiders
That's,
really have no choice but to cut him
yeah.
because there's no way that they want to have him. There's no way if other teams would be able to take on that contract in a trade.
Yeah.
So 3 days after the Super Bowl, he's getting cut because there's no way.
Yeah.
If with this public of getting benched the final two regular season games, there's no way he would approve a trade, even if it was to a team that he wanted to play for, because then he'd be helping the Raiders get draft picks or players in return.
Yeah, I don't get it. So that sucks. Okay.
Yeah.
One quick hit, and then we'll do our shout-outs because we are at 53 minutes, Rich. We had a retirement from a Cub this week, a former Cub, currently a Redbird.
Yeah. Last known was a Redbird, but
Yep.
Dexter Fowler.
Officially retires. And already announced where he's going.
He's going to join the Marquee Network in some capacity. I don't know if it's going to be pre-game, post-game.
And so we'll get to see him.
Maybe they rotate him up in the booth every once in a while.
Yeah. I will get to see him, which is going to be great. I can't wait. So.
All right, Mike. So that appears to be our show. It was a lot easier to get to an hour than I really thought it was going to be, with as light as the
We always can
on the outline.
We can always talk sports for an hour. By the way, I watched at least one entire basketball game. Might not have been the entire basketball game, but at least enough of multiple basketball games since our last show to equate to an entire basketball game. And we are going to have some NBA stuff to talk about next week. I did hear a thing today. I'll just bring it up real quick. We're going to end up talking next week that probably LeBron James is going to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the points leader, the most points ever scored in the NBA. That's probably going to happen this week. We'll discuss that a little bit more. But do you think in doing so, like if he knows that he's within like 3 points or 2 points, does he put up a little sky hook?
I think for me, it's would he if the Lakers are on the road.
The likelihood is they have
would he purposely not score the history-making points if it meant that he could break the record on the home court versus a road court.
So he has one game on the road this weekend. He will have to score, I think it's something like 65 points in order to hit that spot. Likelihood is he's not going to do that in one game. He's averaging 30 a game so far this year. So I don't think that's going to be what happens. So, okay, we'll talk more about that next week. I just thought that that's a sentiment that I would love to see happen. I'd love to see him end it break it in LA with a sky hook, just because that'd be fun. Okay.
Gotcha.
Rich, do you have any shout outs for this week?
I do not. Mike, do you have any?
We did go out for dinner tonight and celebrated Jean Russell's birthday. So happy birthday, Jean. He is, I'll tell you who he is later, but no big deal. Mm-hmm. Just a friend of mine up here. And so got to do that. Had a nice meal at the Hillcrest. Rich, people are watching us on Facebook, but they want to take us on the road. What should they do?
Look us up wherever you download all your other podcasts that you listen to. You can find us on places like Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, just to name a few.
Yep.
And Mike, if they're watching us live, but if they're listening to us out on the podcast side, want to see the video feed, but just don't like Facebook, where else can they find us?
You can find us on YouTube. If you could like, comment, and subscribe to this video and to our channel, that'll help us out quite a bit. Ring the bell if you want to know when we post those videos. Rich, if they're listening to us or they're watching us on YouTube, they don't mind the Facebook, and they want to vote in our poll question. By the way, once again, before we leave, what is that poll question going to be this week?
The poll question will be Cotton Eye Joe versus Enter the Sandman.
Enter Sandman.
But if you want to be notified of when those polls go live or have a way to be able to vote in those polls, make sure to visit Friends of Balls and Sticks or Balls and Sticks, the podcast. You can find the poll as well as the live feed of the video at both places. And if you're watching the live video and you leave a like, comment, a thumbs up, a reaction, or a comment somewhere throughout somewhere within the live video, we'll make sure to give you a shout out at the end. If it's a comment, if we see it in time while we're talking, we'll make sure to get your point, your opinion in the conversation, and work it in the conversation as well. Mike, did we have any comments, reactions to tonight's video?
We did not. But thank you to all those that participated in the poll question today, or this week. Rich, what should I do now?
Mike, let's go ahead and roll the outro.
Broadcasting live from somewhere in Iowa, this is Balls and Sticks, the podcast, with your hosts, Mike and Rich.